Welcome back to bmaster79. In this video we are going to work through ielts speaking topic 6 to 5. Describe a website that sells second-hand items. You will get the brainstorming, a complete 2-minute long turn, and full answers to all 6 part 3 questions. Here is the plan. First the cue card itself. Then a brainstorm you could realistically do in the 15 seconds you are given. After that, a vocabulary bank, the full long turn split bullet by bullet, and then all 6 part 3 questions, each with a name technique you can reuse. 2 honest notes before we start. First, when we call these band 9 answers, that is our own assessment against the public band descriptors. It is not a certified examiner score. Second, the candidate Huong is an invented persona. Cho Tot is a real Vietnamese classified site, but the personal story around it is written for demonstration. So please copy the technique and not the content. This is the cue card exactly as it is written, together with the part 3 questions that come with it. Take a moment to read both columns. Notice that the 4th line, and explain whether you like it, is really a 4th bullet, and a lot of candidates forget it entirely. One thing worth flagging. The part 3 questions here move away from websites and towards children's clothing and recycling. That is not an error, and we have reproduced the set as printed. Part 3 follows the general theme of the cue card rather than its exact wording, and the theme here is consumption, reuse and waste. So prepare the theme, not the object. It is worth remembering what is actually being marked. 4 criteria, each worth a quarter of your score: fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, and pronunciation. In part 2 that means keep going for the full 2 minutes. Signpost each bullet, use topic-specific phrases rather than simply long words, and vary your tenses naturally as you move from description to story to opinion. Section 1. Brainstorming. You get 1 minute to prepare, and roughly 15 seconds of that is enough for the decisions that matter. Start by decoding the prompt. A website, so name it, and say what type of site it is in 1 sentence. Sells second-hand items. The site is the topic, not one object you happened to buy. How you found out about it. That bullet wants a short story in the past simple. What people can buy from it, that is your vocabulary showcase. And whether you like it, an opinion with some balance in it, not simply yes. Now the ideas. For bullet 1, keep it factual, what the site is, and how it works in 2 or 3 details. For bullet 2, the strongest stories have a small obstacle in them. Moving flat with no furniture and no money is an obstacle, a recommendation, some initial doubt, and then a result. That tiny shape is what makes a story sound real. For bullet 3, group the categories rather than listing at random. Electronics, then furniture, then vehicles, then everything else. Grouping sounds organized even when you are improvising. And for bullet 4, never give a flat yes. 2 advantages, 1 honest drawback, then a closing line about how it changed your habits. That balance is what a high band answer sounds like. Here is the vocabulary bank. Notice that almost none of these are rare single words. They are ordinary words in topic-specific combinations, and that is what lexical resource actually rewards. A second-hand marketplace. an online classifieds platform for a fraction of the retail price to keep usable items out of landfill, the other side of the coin. And for part 3, fast fashion, textile waste, curbside collection, deposit return schemes, and scrap collectors. And here is the plan itself. 5 seconds to choose the site and do not deliberate. 5 seconds for one keyword per bullet, 5 words in total, not sentences. 5 seconds to decide your final line so you have somewhere to land. Then budget roughly 30 seconds per bullet, which gets you to 2 minutes without rushing. And if the examiner stops you mid-sentence, that is not a penalty. It means you filled the time. Section 2. The long turn. Hyung will now give the full answer in one take. Follow the text on screen and listen for the moment she moves from one bullet to the next.
The website I'd like to talk about is Cho Top, which is probably the best-known second-hand marketplace in Vietnam.
It works as an online classifieds platform. Ordinary people list things they no longer need, add a few photos and a price, and buyers browse by category and by location. So you usually end up dealing with somebody in your own city.
I first came across it about 4 years ago when I was moving into my first rented flat. I had almost no furniture and a very tight budget, and a colleague of mine said something like, "Don't buy anything new, just have a look on Chai Top first." I was a bit skeptical at the start, to be honest, but within a week I'd picked up a desk, a bookshelf, and a small fridge for roughly a third of what they would have cost in a shop. In terms of what's on there, the range is enormous. Electronics are the most popular category, so laptops, phones and cameras, and then there's furniture, bicycles, motorbikes, baby equipment, and a growing section for clothes. You also get people renting out rooms and advertising services, so it isn't purely second-hand goods. It's more like a general marketplace with second-hand at its core. As for whether I like it, I'd say I'm a big fan with 1 or 2 reservations. What I like most is that it makes things affordable for people who are just starting out, and it keeps perfectly usable items out of landfill, which matters to me. The other side of the coin is that quality is a bit of a lottery, so you have to inspect things carefully and haggle a little. Overall, though, it's changed the way I shop. These days, my first instinct is to check whether I can buy something secondhand before I even consider buying it brand new.
Those are the real numbers measured from the audio you just heard, not an estimate. Notice the speaking rate. It is unhurried. Candidates often assume that speaking faster sounds more fluent, when in practice it costs you accuracy and it makes your pausing sound anxious rather than natural. So what made that work? Signposting without ever announcing a structure, hedging words like probably and roughly, which buy you thinking time and sound natural at the same time. A genuine range of tenses inside a single answer. Reported speech dropped in casually, idiom that is used rather than displayed, and a landing line so the answer ends instead of simply stopping. Here is the same content at 2 different levels. On the left, ideas that are perfectly correct but flat. On the right, the same ideas carried by precise phrasing. Notice that the right-hand column is not longer and it is not more complicated. It is simply more specific. Section 3, Part 3, The Discussion. 6 questions, and for each one we will name the technique so you can reuse it on any topic. Part 3 is different in one important way. The questions are about people in general, not about you, so a personal example works as evidence rather than as the whole answer. Aim for 30 to 60 seconds. Shape beats length, a direct answer, a reason, an example, and then a qualification. And do disagree with the question when you want to. It usually produces a better answer than agreeing politely. Question 1.
I'd broadly agree with that. Children grow out of clothes incredibly quickly. A jacket that fits in the spring can be too small by the autumn, so buying a huge wardrobe is money that's essentially thrown away. That said, I draw a distinction between quantity and quality. Buying a few well-made items that can be passed down to younger siblings or cousins seems perfectly sensible. What I do think is wasteful is the pressure some parents feel to keep their children in the latest brands, which has more to do with the parent's image than the child's needs.
Question 2.
It varies quite a lot depending on the person. The most common thing, I'd say, is simply passing them on to relatives or friends with younger children. That's very much the norm where I'm from. Beyond that, some people donate to charity collection points or to drives run at their workplace, and a smaller group resell online. Unfortunately, a fair amount still ends up in the bin, particularly things that are stained or worn out, because people assume nobody would want them, even though a lot of that could be recycled as textile waste.
Question 3.
There are three main drivers, I think. The most obvious one is price. You can pick up a designer coat for a fraction of the retail costs. The second is environmental awareness. Younger people in particular are far more conscious of how wasteful fast fashion is, and buying secondhand is an easy way to cut your footprint. And the third, which people tend to underestimate, is the thrill of the hunt. Vintage shops and online marketplaces let you find something genuinely unique rather than wearing what everybody else is wearing on the high street.
Question 4.
The most immediate problem is sheer volume. Landfill sites fill up, and cities have to find somewhere to put the overflow, which usually means incineration or shipping waste abroad. Then there's the pollution angle. Plastics break down into microplastics that get into the water supply, and decomposing waste releases methane, which is a very potent greenhouse gas. And there's an economic cost as well, because when we throw away metals and rare materials, we have to mine more of them, and those resources are finite. So it isn't just an eyesore. It feeds directly into climate change and resource scarcity.
Question 5.
Absolutely, although I'd argue that encouragement on its own doesn't go far enough. Awareness campaigns are useful for shifting attitudes, but people respond much more reliably to convenience and to money. So I'd like to see governments invest in the practical side, curbside collection, clearly labelled bins, deposit return schemes for bottles and cans. And I'd combine that with regulation on the producers, making manufacturers responsible for the packaging they put out. If you leave it purely to individual goodwill, you get a small minority doing it diligently and everybody else opting out.
Question 6.
It's fairly informal compared with Europe, I'd say. There isn't a comprehensive sorting system in most areas, so a lot of the work is done by scrap collectors who go round on bicycles buying up cardboard, metal and plastic bottles by weights. It's an entire informal economy and it's remarkably efficient. Households also tend to reuse a great deal. Glass jars become storage containers, and old clothes get cut up into cleaning rags. In the bigger cities, that's changing, and you now see sorting bins in apartment blocks, but I'd say the habit is still developing.
Those are the 6 techniques, and none of them are tied to this topic. Agree, then qualify. Rank the options. Split into 3 drivers. Build a cause and effect chain. Say yes but go further. Or describe your country honestly and then contrast it with somewhere else. Learn the frames. The content changes from topic to topic, but the frames do not. Before we finish, 3 things to leave behind. Do not memorize this answer word for word. Memorize the frames instead. Do not drift into describing one item you bought when the cue card asks about the site. And in part 3, do not answer purely from your own experience. Make the general claim first, then use your experience as evidence. Now it is your turn. Record yourself answering this cue card for the full 2 minutes. Then try part 3 question 4 without preparing it. Compare your version against the frames rather than against the words. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.